The price discovery happens really in two ways. First, with our market specialists, they are in touch with virtually every aspect of their respective markets. And so they are very much in sync and aware of where the pricing is coming out, where the buyers feel comfortable, what levels the sellers feel comfortable at, and so they're able to provide that market color to the buyers or the sellers. But the second thing is, and this is where an online trading platform really helps these markets form, is on the trading platform you get a degree of price discovery, of price transparency, where if you're running an auction on a sale, you can see where the price movement occurs, or if something is closed, you can see at what price the transaction closed at, and therefore that gives you your method for price discovery.
Are there guarantees that you put in place to the sell side, which is, I mean, the sell side meaning of the security, in terms of how liquid it's going to be, how quickly the turnover can happen, how tradable the asset will be?
We do not. We don't put any guarantees in place for a few reasons. Because each of these markets are in such a nascent stage. Even our oldest market is only 5 years old. Our second oldest is only 2 years old. So we don't provide any guarantees. Having said that, we have been one of the most successful places probably in history to bring as much liquidity as now exists in these formerly illiquid asset classes. So the sellers come with a certain expectation, but no level of guarantee. And a lot of that is driven by the seller's expectations. We can pretty much guarantee them that they're going to get a bid, even multiple bids. But the reason we can't guarantee a sale and liquidity is because we don't know where the seller's expectations are going to come.
In that sense, both on the sell and the buy side, how transparent are they willing to be with each other, and what sort of rules do you have in place in order that they trade efficiently?
Yes, and the answer is it depends. We provide for absolute anonymity when required by buyers and sellers. Having said that, that doesn't mean that you can't provide transparency on the underlying asset, even though you may not know who the buyer is or who the seller is. So what we do is we say to the sellers, the more transparency that you're able to provide, the more data that you're able to provide on whatever it is you're trying to sell, the better pricing you're going to get, the more rapidly you'll be able to sell it. And we also, as a company, do our best to provide liquidity. We have an internal data and analytics team whose job it is to reach out to the four corners of the earth and aggregate data on all of the various illiquid asset classes that we have, and then we offer it for free, because that transparency is going to help transactions get done. Secondly, we also have something called the Second Market Ecosystem, which is a network of third-party service providers who specialize in illiquid assets. And they live on the Second Market platform. So you as a buyer, if you're interested in gaining transparency or crunching some numbers to figure out what the value of a certain asset is, if you can't get enough information for free from us, you're just one click away from gaining access to a universe of specialists in illiquid assets who can help provide you with the answers that you need.
How much risk do you bring on board of your own trading system, and what sort of risk do you take as a result of the service that you provide?
We actually don't take on any risk. One of the key principles of Second Market is that we are an independent marketplace. So we never buy or sell the asset classes that trade over Second Market. We simply connect the buyers and sellers and help them directly facilitate a transaction.
What about the payment settlement process itself?
What we do for that is occasionally we'll act in a riskless principle role, so that nobody has to worry about that. But typically what we do is we have a dual escrow system. So you don't have to worry about giving someone your securities and not getting the cash, or giving someone cash and not getting the securities. They both go in escrow, and they do not exchange until both escrow accounts have been filled.
So with all of this infrastructure already in place in a place like the United States, you come to Asia,
yes,
where we have many different countries, many different legal systems,
yes,
and
regulatory systems,
and regulatory systems, and with many different forms of illiquid assets, which hasn't seen the light of day, basically.
Yes.
And you think that you can make a difference?
Yes, I think we can, and I'll tell you why I think we can, and then we'll talk about a little bit more about our agenda here in Asia, which is what we learned. Our first two asset classes were restricted securities in public companies, so equity securities, and what were called auction rate securities. These were credit securities. They could not be more different from one another. yet we were able to apply the same principles of liquidity, centralization, efficient settlement, transparency, and our hybrid model, and bring liquidity to these disparate asset classes. And it really taught us that as different as asset classes are, you can do the same things and bring liquidity to all of them. So having said that, Asia, there are a number of other factors that exist in the various Asian markets that are different from the United States. One of the primary ones is the simple evolution of the financial system. The Asian markets are not as far along in terms of the sophistication and age of their financial systems as, say, the United States or Europe.
Well, even there you can't speak in generalities.
Yes,
Because,
Japan is incredibly sophisticated. So that's exactly right. So that highlights one of the other difficulties I was going to get into, and you had mentioned earlier, which is each market is so different.
Again, which markets are your low-hanging fruits for the moment? Because I'm sure that's not necessarily the most efficient markets, because it might actually be the second-tier markets, which has a larger pool of liquid securities that you can take off with.
I think a couple of the earlier ones are Hong Kong and Singapore.
Still,
Yes.
yeah, okay.
And I say that because they are going to give us the best indication of what direction we should be heading in, because they are the most connected. Even of all of the various geographical regions, they still have a very real sense of what is going on in them. Now, we won't be able to truly see what is going on until we get into each of those, but they are very good places to start because they are further along the curve in terms of their development. However, you're absolutely right. Probably the greatest opportunities will exist in some of the economies that have not yet, or the financial systems that have not yet been fully developed. And
Well, the largest non-performing loan portfolios sit not in Hong Kong or Singapore, but
Yes.
in some of the other countries, which are halfway to being fully and well regulated, basically.
Yes.
So, do you see you as an organization growing in these places? Do you actually have to be in the market to trade in them?
The answer is, I guess, technically no, but realistically, yes. We need local people on the grounds to build relationships. And that's one of the key factors that we know coming in, is that we don't have the relationships. Now, fortunately, given our two partners, our two most recent investors, Temasek and the Li Ka-shing Foundation, that helps. That helps us a long way because of the reputation and the relationships that they've established in the region over decades. That's going to help us. Having said that, there is nothing like having local people on the ground to help you develop the markets, and that's something we know that we're going to need.
So give us a sense of the timelines you've set for yourself, and what are the trigger points at which you will know that the Asian market is going to take off the way the US took off for you?
I would say we're probably going to be spending the first 1 to 2 years simply finding Asian-based buyers and sellers of the existing asset classes, the US-based asset classes on second market.
Okay, so
Having said that, during that same time, plus a little beyond that, we are going to continue to explore what are the region-specific asset classes that really make sense to bring our liquidity model to. Having said that, we are very realistic, and I don't think that we expect to see any real size, any real traction in Asia for probably another 3 to 5 years. And we're okay with that. We're patient, and we know what it takes to, or I should say, we know that it takes patience to succeed in Asia, and we're willing to wait.
how's the conversations between your second market and the regulators and has been going on, like with Singapore, with Hong Kong?
We're just starting those conversations right now, or I should say a few months ago, and so far they're going fairly well. We have a decent idea of each of those regulatory regimes. They're very business friendly, but they're also very organized and protective in a positive way, so that you don't have any sort of corrupt systems going on. They're very beneficial regulatory systems, and we've had very good conversations to make sure that we're doing everything that we need to do to fit into that scheme, just like we do in the U.S.
Well, do you smell that you might actually, be up against protectionist type of measures?
You know, I guess going back to a theme that we've been talking about, it depends which market we're talking about. As far as Hong Kong and Singapore, not at all. They've been very open and very friendly, and we expect to be able to do some fairly robust business in both of those locations.
Jeremy Smith, thank you so much for spending
It's
time
my
with us.
pleasure. Thank you.